the Week 7 preview on the Athletic Football Show. When we were talking earlier this week, when we were doing our production meeting for this, we do it about a couple hours before we start recording. Derrik was like overly enthusiastic about this show and this week. I was like a little bit taken aback by how much excited he was to dig into this. What's got you fired up today, buddy?
It's a good week, man. I think, part of it, last week was probably the most sleepy down week that we've had of NFL stuff. So coming out of that and having you look at the schedule and there's depending on the week, 5 games we could have argued for the best game of the week or something we could have thrown into that segment. That is, at this stage in the season after last week, I'm extremely jazzed about that.
It's funny. I agree, but the noon slate in week 7 has some serious yucky potential. There's a lot of potential mess ready to be on display in the early window, but I really like the late window games. Monday night is just going to be a banger. And so I feel like that's the centerpiece, but yeah, I think it'll be better, but there's some potential for some real ickiness in the noon window on Sunday.
You guys already
we get
know
Spencer Rattler in the new window. What are you talking about?
That is true.
We're talking to a guy who gets that excited about Spencer Rattler. So.
It's going to be really fun because this is the first time that the Bears have played at noon since we've been in the studio, right? And so this is the first experience you're going to have with me forcing the Bears game onto its own TV as everything else is happening and you guys having to live with it. So I know you've said that you're okay with it. Just wait until we get 4 weeks into this experiment.
It's like nature is healing because the Bears are back at noon and the Cowboys are playing the 3:30 game no matter how deserving they are of it. So this is the NFL I know and love.
We've got 2.5 games of the week this week. You guys will figure out what that means here in a little bit, but we're going to start with the marquee game of week 7, the Bucs at the Lions. These games of the week presented by BetMGM. The Lions are 5.5-point favorites in this game, which I don't know, caused me to raise a little bit of an eyebrow. I think that seems like a pretty big line considering the fact that the Bucs are 5-1 right now. Derrik, not surprised. He's a Bucs hater, so this makes sense to him.
When you win 5 of your games on the last play of the games, there's a little bit of weirdness going on here. There's a little bit of they're good, but not that good, maybe.
This is Derrik to a T, where you're like, man, did you see this NFC South quarterback that's lighting the league on fire? And Derrick's like, I know, Spencer Rattler's the man, dude. Forget about Baker Mayfield.
I can't wait until we get to the Baker MVP part of this discussion and Derrik starts making the case for Spencer Rattler's MVP case. All right. Bucs at Lions. Why is this the game of the week? We try to answer that with all of the games that we pick for this segment, and this feels like a pretty easy one to me, Dave. We have a 5-1 Bucs team going to the Lions. We know the Lions are yet again a contender in the NFC. I think we talked about this a little bit on the Team Tier show that we did earlier on the Athletic Football Show this week, just about the Bucs and their placement and all of this, and whether they can kind of kick down the door of that contender tier in the NFC. They've beaten mostly teams that were in tiers 2 through 4. And the show that we did earlier this week, this is the first time where they have a chance to really knock off one of the best teams in the NFL. And so I do think this is a potential week for the Bucs to maybe change the way that people like Derrik are currently thinking about that.
I was going to say, single out Derrik because I don't need the Bucs to prove anything to me, especially when it comes to the Lions. I mean, they were one of the only teams that beat the Lions last year. They played them really well in the playoffs a couple years ago. So I have every faith the Bucs can put on a good showing in this game. But I guess narratively, and you're right, our tiers show kind of illustrated that, where you just don't think of the Bucs as a team that you can take for granted, where you're just like, the Bills and the Chiefs will be in the playoffs no matter what they're dealing with. The Bucs are not thought of that way.
They're a playoff team every year, but they're like a divisional round exit team every year at best.
Not a heavyweight. Yes. And winning games like this could maybe change people's perception of them.
What's interesting to me when you look at these two teams specifically, I find that there are a lot of parallels in just what they've become over the last few years. And again, I do think that the success that the Lions have had is at a slightly different level. They went to an NFC Championship game. I think for a good chunk of last season, you probably could have said they were the best team in the NFL before injuries kind of tore them apart. But I think in the ways that they've kind of established themselves over the last few years, I said this on a show a long time ago, and I think it applies to these two teams really well. I said, being a GM in the NFL is having to figure out a way to win with Ryan Tannehill as your quarterback, right? Not everyone gets a Josh Allen or a Lamar Jackson or a Patrick Mahomes. for the most part, you're dealing with guys that are in the middle class of quarterbacks, guys that can be really good like Jared Goff and Baker Mayfield have been, but they aren't the aliens of the sport. And that just leaves you with a little bit less margin for error. And if you look at what Jason Licht and Brad Holmes have done and how they've built these teams, I think the vision they have for what types of teams they want, how they're kind of always thinking 2 or 3 steps ahead for building depth at certain positions. Like, I know that the Bucs are banged up at receiver, but the idea that like Tez Johnson has come in and given them like real productivity at that spot, players like Ben Bredesen, who signed for nothing after a really down year with the Giants, and then he comes to Tampa, plays well enough to earn an extension. You see the best versions of guys as they come through these buildings. And I think the same has been true in Detroit, the way that it has been in Tampa. And so what Jason Licht and Brad Holmes have done specifically, just in how they've created a culture of resilience, continuity, and just throughout that entire building, I do think there are a lot of similarities between these two organizations over the last 3 or 4 years.
And maybe most importantly, and you touched on it briefly, but just nailing your draft classes, like
that's the core of it.
Deeply, deeply impressive. And I think it's fun to think back in retrospect as the Lions have become this fantastic class of the NFL type of team where a lot of that has been second guessed for Brad Holmes by people like you and me, where he got killed for taking a running back and a linebacker in the first round, or did you just give up too much for the Arkansas receiver in the 3rd round who didn't really do a whole lot in college? And time again, and it's a small-ish sample size because it's only since 2021, or trading up for Jameson Williams, like, been right about a lot of these sort of DNA changing decisions, like the major draft picks. Like, you hit on the obvious ones like an Aiden Hutchinson, but you're also right about anything that remotely resembles a gamble. And then Jason Licht, I mean, that is a decade plus of excellence in the NFL draft. I mean, obviously, when you do it for that long, you're going to have some
it
whiffs.
comes on the heels of like the Roberto Aguayo years and the tough, lean stretches that the Bucs had. Man, but it absolutely has been turned around.
I went back and looked, like, yes, you can go find some pretty embarrassing decisions, some embarrassing classes if you look back over Jason Light's history, Roberto Aguayo being the most famous one. But man,
was that the Vernon Hargraves draft too? Like, it was a rough stretch for them for a little while.
I always forget he was a 1st-round pick. That like jump scares me every time I look at it.
There are some real fun ones waiting for you in the Bucs draft history page of Pro Football Reference.
You can count on the Bucs for like at least a hit a year for the most part over the last like 6 years, and then some truly incredible ones. Like, you get a headlining class, like they drafted Tristan Wirfs and Antoine Winfield back to back.
That's the one that I always come back to, because it felt like that roster was after they got Brady, right? And so they signed Brady, and then when I thought about that team, I was like, man, if they get like one defensive playmaker and a tackle out of this draft, they could be really good.
Like all-pro caliber?
All-pro guys at both of those spots, and then won the Super Bowl that year.
Or even like, okay, I'm not about to say a single sexy name, but the 2022 draft produced Luke Gadecki, Rashad White, Cade Otton, and Zion McCollum. Just putting the ball in play. Okay. Like, three out of 4 from the plate with like 2 RBI, like just doing your job really, really well. And it's been like that way more often than not. It's really impressive. And 2025 looking really strong through the first 6 weeks of the season.
And that joke, Derek, about you having to win with Ryan Tannehill, I use that as like an archetype of quarterback, right? Like, it's a guy who is probably the 12th or 13th best quarterback in the league, even when he was playing at his best. But in this situation, both the Bucs and Lions have their version of the Ryan Tannehill arc in terms of finding a discarded, formerly productive player and then getting more out of him in this stop than he had ever been in his entire career. Like, what the Lions and Bucs have done respectively with Jared Goff and Baker Mayfield is a huge reason that they are currently in this spot.
Yeah, it is. Like, I mean, finding above average quarterback play in this league is incredibly hard to do. And sometimes you have to go onto the scrap heap for it. And obviously Ryan Tannehill was traded for like nothing. Jared Goff was traded for a much better quarterback on the other end. And then obviously Baker Mayfield acquired for absolutely nothing. And so for them to be able to do that, it's also like, you see a pretty clear formula with all the teams that have done this, right? It's like really good offensive line in front of these guys.
That's another parallel that's absolutely worth mentioning between those two teams. The offensive line ecosystem they've created is remarkable.
It's insane. And obviously it's like a slightly different, like how they've done it and where they've invested a little bit, but like they've just done a really good job of, you get a couple of your stars with, obviously for the Lions for a long time, it was Frank Ragnow and then Penei Sewell. And then you just fill it in with a couple of these other mid-round picks or guys that you sign off the street to do it for a year or two. And they've both done a really, really good job of that. And then on top of just protecting the quarterback well and making sure that he feels comfortable, you find whatever his mode of offense that he really wants to operate in. With Baker Mayfield, it's a lot of, we're going to throw down the field, and then we're going to take some stuff off your plate with like a really good screen game. And they do a really good job of that in Tampa Bay. Whereas obviously with the Lions, it's, we're not going to throw down the field that much, but we're going to throw over the middle where Jared Goff is like, he's going to pin that dig route, that drift route, whatever, onto anybody into any window. I mean, you even saw it against the Chiefs. Some of the windows that he was fitting in that game were preposterous, and like very few other quarterbacks want to throw. And like he, more than anyone, probably fits into the exact Ryan Tannehill archetype. And he's just kind of leveled it up since then.
The other one that I hadn't really thought about until this very moment, the Bucs' ability to maintain this level of success after moving on from multiple offensive coordinators, that was a lingering question we had about the Lions coming into the year. So far, so good. And I think that, again, speaks to just resilience in your organization, your ability to kind of withstand that level of attrition.
I'm thinking about this off the rip, but I mean, this is the conversation we're having about these two teams and these two programs. Like, obviously, Philly would have a lot to say about this. There are a couple teams like Kansas City and Buffalo. Obviously, when you draft a quarterback of that caliber, it makes everything easier. But the stability that these two teams have put together over the last 4 or 5, 6 years, whatever it is, it's just really impressive. And I think these are two of the best programs in the NFL over recent history, especially when, like I said, you don't have a Josh Allen or a Patrick Mahomes or a Lamar Jackson that can kind of tie everything together and paper over the cracks. The stability and the consistency with which they've done things well is commendable.
Yeah, I think you can make a really serious argument that over the last 3 or 4 years, Jason Licht and Brad Holmes have been the best general managers in the NFL. And I include Howie Roseman in that conversation because I think we've talked a lot about this, Derek. Like, there's just more of a margin for error in the way that the Eagles are allowed to do things. Like the way they financially kick the can down the road, you can make mistakes here and there and they just don't hurt you quite as much. I don't think if the Bucs and the Lions made a mistake to the level of like the Bryce Huff contract, I think you'd feel it a little bit more than you would for a team like Philly, just because of the way that they've been able to spend and the way that they've been able to go about constructing that roster.
That's the thing. I think there's no denying that Howie has made the most of his situation, but it comes with like a very small asterisk of, yeah, like he just gets to do stuff that other guys don't get to. He gets to take more swings, more bites at the apple than I think a guy like Jason Licht or Brad Holmes would be able to. Like you said, if those guys made some of those misses, I think it would hurt this roster a lot more, but they just don't make a lot of those misses, and a lot of their aggressive moves have generally worked out for them.
So let's get to the specifics of what might happen on Sunday between these two teams.
Monday.
Let's get to this. This is me. This is another example of me not knowing what the schedule is. I have no idea what anybody is playing at any given week. Let's get to the specifics of what happens when these teams play this week in week 7 in the NFL.
In week 7, yeah.
The Bucs have historically played the Lions really well. They beat them in the regular season last year. They lost to them close in the 2023 playoffs when, that Lions team felt like they were significantly ahead of where the Bucs were at that point. And I think, Derek, the more intriguing side of the ball when it comes to that tough matchup is when the Lions offense has the ball against this Bucs defense. I think the way that Todd Bowles usually goes about his business, but especially the way that he's approached Jared Goff over the last couple matchups, I think there's a reason that the Lions offense doesn't look like the well-oiled machine that they often do when they have to play against these Bucs teams.
And I think Todd Bowles, that was kind of a learning process for him, because I think the first, couple of times that he played against this team, since Jared Goff has been the quarterback, is he did want to throw a lot of the blitzes, because that's what Todd Bowles goes into probably any week thinking that he's going to do. But I think that last year we saw, he was like, you know what? Jared Goff, if we send extra bodies, he's very good at knowing where the voids are. But if we create the illusion of a void and we only bring forward with some of these simulated pressures, creepers, all that stuff, drop random guys off into the hash, or hook area that he just didn't think would be there, that's how you can start to frazzle Jared Goff. I also think that getting pressure along the interior is a way to pressure Jared Goff, which, again, if you're firing your linebackers, that's going to be where a lot of the pressure is coming from. And so I think that they've done a really good job. Like last year, they only sent more than 4 pass rushers 23.2% of the time, which was like a league average game and like well below whatever Todd Bowles wants to do in a given season. And so I think this was a learning process for him. And I think that's going to be a huge part of this game. I think in the passing game, it's going to come down to like, can they just get Jared Goff guessing the wrong way 3 or 4 times this game versus how many times is Jared Goff going to throw a dig route right past the linebacker's ear hole? Like, I think that's going to be the push and pull on some of these passing downs.
Just for context, so they blitzed on per next gen is like 26% of snaps. In the 2 combined matchups in 2023, it was 46% of snaps. So that is a huge difference. And Goff, I think his success rate was like 45% in that game last year to negative 0.23 EPA per dropback in that Bucs game. And what's even more important when you consider all of this is that Jared Goff was the best quarterback in the league against the blitz last year if you look at any sort of advanced metric. He has a 65% success rate against the blitz per next gen stats this year. It was at like 55% last year. So all these areas where the Lions offense was incredible last season against the blitz, against man coverage, they've actually been better in those areas over the first 6 weeks than they even were last year when they looked like an absolute monster in those situations.
Funny thing, it's fun to remember the context, and I remember that game vividly. Obviously, we didn't know the Lions were going to go on to only lose one more game, but when they lost to Tampa in week 2 of last season, they put up 463 yards of offense. They went 1 of 7 in the red zone. Like, it's just the classic case where like execution down there can make or break you. And Tampa did enough to force an incompletion or get a sack, or I think they picked Goff off in the red zone at least once. I don't remember exactly how many times, but they gave them fits down in that part of the field. And so obviously Goff is killing the blitz. It doesn't seem like something you want to do. But remember, was it 2 weeks ago? Darnold was killing him on the blitz too. And then the blitz that decided the game was the one that led to the errant throw that Levante David was able to pick off. And I wonder who's going to be more on the screws in those sorts of situations. Cause like, I'd be shocked if the Lions can't move the ball here. It's just a matter of, can they finish the job?
Let's get to the other side of the ball. We have a matchup between 2 mash units at this point with the Bucs receivers and the Lions defensive backs. I actually appreciate this because at least it makes it like a somewhat fairer fight. In most situations, the Bucs receivers, when you're down to like your 4th and 5th guy and you're going against a team starting secondary, it's like, oh, that's kind of a bummer. At least in this one, we're at similar levels of depth that we've had to dig into.
It's so funny because there's an outside chance or a chance that Mike Evans comes back from his hamstring. And typically, like if I'm Baker Mayfield, I'm bummed out. I'm pissed off that my receivers aren't all healthy together. But with what he's been dealing with, he's like, this is manna from heaven. Like if Mike Evans can be available, so it's not just Tez Johnson, Cameron Johnson, and Sterling Shepard in his 12th year, he's like, yes, please. Mike Evans would make my life so much easier if he's available for this game.
It sounds like Aleem McNeil might be back for the Lions, which we've talked a lot about that over the first 5 or 6 weeks. Even though the Lions defense has been playing pretty darn well, you clearly see a lack of pass rush juice in the middle of that defense. And so getting a guy like Aleem McNeil back is going to be huge. Anything else, Derek, that you have at front of mind when you think about this matchup, the Bucs offense against the Lions defense in this game?
I think that probably is the big one to me. I would also still say like the Bucs screen game has still been good, but I would also say the Lions have done a pretty good job. Like their linebackers are playing extremely well, and so I think that's going to be an interesting like strength on strength. Which of these guys is gonna handle that well? Because again, I think Jack Campbell's probably playing the best ball that he's ever played, and then Alex Anzalone I think looks pretty good, especially coming downhill right now. So I think Tampa is pretty used to getting 3 free plays a game on some of those screens. Are they going to be able to get them in a game like this?
The last thing to note on this side of the ball, our producer Katie brought this up when we were talking earlier today. It's pretty ridiculous. Baker, before the season, his MVP odds per BetMGM were plus 3,000. He was 30-1 to be the MVP. As it currently stands, he is plus 325 to be the MVP of the NFL. The only 2 guys ahead of him are Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen, which that's just like baking in history. Like the fact that it's this close between these 3 guys, I think speaks to not only the season that Baker has had, but I think, Dave, some of the growing momentum and the narrative around the season that Baker's had. We've talked about it a lot. Everyone else seems to be talking about it a lot. Like he is probably the central figure in the NFL so far this year.
Yeah, he absolutely is. And A, the success that he's having, and B, I think people have paid attention to what the Bucs have been through, like the injuries on their offense and the things he's had to overcome. The fact that obviously Emeka Egbuka is a phenomenal rookie, but having a lot of success with a rookie receiver. And I think also visibility probably plays a role. Like you get a Monday night game against Houston. And I know it wasn't a primetime game, but everybody was watching that show between the Seahawks and Bucs. Like everybody saw that game. And when you throw that in with a highlight like the 3rd and 14 scramble he had against San Francisco, that, that's the type of play where they're cutting in during every other game to be like, you see this shit that Baker did? Yeah. So I think, he's playing well enough to justify it, but there's a lot of narrative push behind it too.
A couple things to keep in mind here. Brian Branch is suspended for this game. So just throw that on top of the pile of injuries that the Lions are dealing with. And then Kirby Joseph also is banged up right now. And so beyond the corners that are hurt, the Lions could also be missing 2 safeties in this game. They're going to be missing at least 1.
If Kirby can't go, then it would just be Amik Robertson as far as guys that are supposed to be out there.
And he's in that different spot than the one where he started the season because they had pushed him outside. Our next game of the week is 2 games of the week, and this will make sense in a second here. We were trying to pick what our second game would be, and we couldn't decide. We were arguing about it in real time on Tuesday when we start programming the show. So we thought, you know what? Let's just talk about that and why we couldn't decide between these 2 games. This naturally works out very well because you and Derek are on opposite sides of this argument. And so I'm just going to sit back here and be the arbiter as you guys try to make your case for which game belongs in this discussion. The 2 options here are the Colts at the Chargers and the Rams versus the Jaguars in London. Derek, you are on the side of Rams-Jags as being our second game of the week. You have the floor. Make your case for why Rams-Jaguars is the second game of the week.
Will make my case, and I want to lay it out for the audience too. Objectively, it is very close. These 2 teams are like, I think the Rams and the Colts.
He's already backtracking. We haven't even started. He's already backtracking.
I am not going to back off of this, by the way. The Rams and the Colts are within 2 spots of DVOA each other, and I believe the Jaguars and the Chargers are within 2 spots. Like, this is about as close as it gets in terms of a matchup. However, the reason I am picking Rams-Jaguars is that if I'm comparing the 2, quote, better teams in this game, which to me are the Rams and the Colts in either respective game, I would rather, if I have to split the difference in quality or what I want to watch, it is the team that has Matthew Stafford. And I also think the Rams defense is just a little bit better. And so I'm going to pick that team as like the... Exactly. Like we've already have proof of concept that this team is at least a little bit better than them. So that is why I would say that team is a little bit better. Now it comes down to the Jaguars and the Chargers. If this was happening in week 3, I would probably say that the Chargers are a more compelling team, where they had a little bit more health. Like Khalil Mack was still there, Joe Alt, all this stuff. You still had some of your best players, Omarion Hampton. Those guys may not play this week and probably won't play this week, which to me makes a Jaguars team that is randomly like one of the better teams in the league by record and having a really good defense. I think that makes them a more compelling team. So I would much rather watch Rams-Jaguars. There's also like the added little bit of element of like Liam Cohen going against Sean McVay, which I think is really interesting. Like there's a little bit more juice to this game for me.
The Liam Cohen, Sean McVay wrinkle is actually a good thing to bring up. And we had not mentioned that earlier today. And so I think that's a point in Derek's favor. I don't appreciate the Kamani Vidal erasure and how we're not excited about that. Marion Hampton not playing is the reason Derek doesn't want to watch this game. So here's my concern with Derek's case. I think this is a lot of, well, they're the better teams of the 2. I prefer the Rams, and the lesser teams of the 2, I prefer the Jaguars. That's not how I conceive of matchups and like which one is more compelling to me. And so I think there's an argument that even if the teams, the better and the lesser team, aren't quite as interesting or intriguing in your matchup here, the game itself could be more interesting. So I'm already like giving you a little bit here.
Yeah, no, I'm more intrigued by just the matchup, and I think the stakes for me and
It's kind of what I mean. The stakes. That's the normal way I could have said that.
By virtue of this being an AFC matchup, Colts at Chargers, I just think there's a little more on the line and a little more that gets me juiced up. And on top of that, I'll be painfully self-aware. I don't trust the London game to be good, and they can be sometimes. They can be. But I don't fully trust a London game to be good, and that's where the Rams and Jags are playing. And on top of that, I'll be brutally self-aware. I don't want to have to treat an 8:30 a.m. game with like game of the week intensity.
So true.
You know, like I don't want to hang on every moment of this game. I want to sort of like make my coffee and get ready for work and just sort of have it on, like it's way too intense. Like Derek's going to get out of bed at 6:30 with game of the week intensity. That's a little much for me.
He's going to get out of bed at 6:30 with his Trevor
playing?
Lawrence jersey and wig on. He's going to be ready to roll.
Yeah, what are you talking about? Those two quarterbacks, I will be up for it.
Derek's going to sit up in his bed at 6 on Sunday and yell, Duval! Anyway,
he doesn't need the wig. He just takes out the ponytail holder.
That's exactly right.
I just rip out the ponytail. I'm good.
I think, and like Derek's point is valid. The Chargers are very beat up, but I think there's a natural tendency to just write off the Chargers because of everything that they've been through. And like when you saw Herbert trying to throw against the Giants front and you saw what it looked like last week, there's a tendency, and we kind of talked about it on the tier show where you're like, poor Chargers. They're too beat up to compete. Who could ever take this team seriously? I think there's at least optimism that they are moving past the active triage station portion of their season. Like they are beat up, but Denzel Perryman is back to practice. I think full practice, like he's expected to go. So I think that helps your run defense. I don't want to get too excited, but they opened the Khalil Mack practice window. So even if he can't go now, like Khalil Mack is making his way back to the practice field. That is very exciting. I don't think Joe Alt makes it back for this game, but he at least could. And so, yes, the Chargers are beat up, but I think the Chargers they're more competent and more complete and healthier than they were when we watched them against the Giants, which I think weighs very heavily in people's minds, where you're just like, what the hell is Herbert supposed to do if he's getting pressured 60% of the time or whatever silly number it was? So I think the Chargers are a better team, evidenced by the fact that they are favored to win this game, by the way. Like it's easy.
That's another interesting wrinkle to this.
Yeah. The Colts are 5-1. They're the top team in the AFC by record, but they are not favored to win this game. They are, I think, a good team. I think they are still not. Like they are a flawed team. I think Justin Herbert, provided he has time to throw, can take advantage of this Colts defense. Charvarius Ward's still not practicing. Sounds like Kenny Moore might be back, but we don't know for sure. And by the way, I don't think that much of the Colts pass rush. It's not terrible. It's not some sort of Achilles heel, but it is not Abdul Carter being in Justin Herbert's lap in the blink of an eye 12 times on Sunday afternoon.
Given the potential health of the Chargers offensive line getting better and the state of the Colts pass rush, the Colts pass rush is not equipped to ruin the watchability of the game in the way that the Giants were, which I think is an interesting point and a good one.
That is completely what I mean. And so, like, if you take out the idea that Herbert won't have time, what could be more fun than one of the most complete offenses in the NFL in the Colts doing their thing against a team that can't stop the run, by the way? So that's fun to watch with Jonathan Taylor. And then on the other side, we just get to watch Justin Herbert play Superman and try to win this game, which I think he could do.
And the Colts secondary is still really beat up.
Yes.
And so there's a chance that we actually get like some watchability from the Chargers offense overall. And Derek, I'll ask you this, because as somebody who has really enjoyed watching Puka Nacua play football this season, I think a lot of us have, the fact that he may not play in this game is a huge bummer on multiple levels. I think you can make a solid argument that without Puka in the fold, even with Matthew Stafford, I think the Colts offense is a more compelling watch than the Rams are without Puka Nacua. Do you think that's fair?
Yes and no. Obviously, Puka is one of the coolest players in the league to watch because he plays like a psychopath and he's a receiver, and there's just not a lot of guys that do what he does. At the same time, how many coaches are more fun to watch when they have to problem solve than Sean McVay? Like, that's the thing that sells me. And like, we're going to get a little bit more Jordan Whittington. Maybe it's
Derek's
just a
for the Jordan
Ferguson
Whittington game. That's exactly where he's going with this.
I'm so ready. I'm so ready for the Jordan Whittington, like 7 for 90 in a touchdown game. I'm all the way there for that. So if we can get that, I'm super in.
I think I'm probably going to give the nod to Rams Jags for a lot of the stuff that Derek said. And I think I'm really curious about what the Jaguars are. Like, I'm still trying to figure that out. And so I think a game against the Rams maybe gives you a little bit more information about that. And I also think that the chaos factor of what the Jags have been so far this season and all the weird games they've played and just the general like that last drive that Trevor Lawrence had against the Chiefs and sort of like the franticness that they can play with and how fun that can be. I think I'm kind of interested in that. And the Rams have a little bit of that too. Like the Rams red zone woes and just like, I think that there is a potential for hilarity involved in the Rams-Jags game that there might not be with the Colts-Chargers game.
A Jags-London game is bound to involve some hijinks. Like there's no doubt about that. I think this is going to be a really good game. And this is the type
close.
This is the type of thing I only care about, but the Colts are doing the elusive SoFi Stadium double. They played there against the Rams like 3 weeks ago or whenever that was, and now they're going back. I just think that's a dumb little quirk of this game. It doesn't happen very often. So yeah, that's fun.
We're going to give it to Rams-Jags as the second game of the week, but we only have time to hit one thing from each of these games. So let's do that. Derek, the one thing you were watching in the one thing you were looking for in Rams-Jags is what?
I mean, it's kind of myself for this game, which is Matthew Stafford in this offense versus what the Jaguars defense has been, where I think they've been good, but I think even with that, there's still like a smidgen of like, how good are they really? And so I think that that's going to be interesting, especially without Puka Nacua. Like this is a Jaguars team that is really good at defending the run, even with some of their lighter boxes. I think their backers are playing better. I think the line is playing a lot better. And this is against a Rams Rams offensive line that like they can kind of get successful gains, but they don't really get any pops. But maybe if the Jaguars front can stop them from getting some of those successful gains, that would be really nice for them. And then I think we've just seen a lot of nice moments from the Jaguars secondary. Like obviously Jordan Lewis has played incredibly well this year. I think Monteric Brown is what he is as like a cornerback too, but like he's had some really big plays and big moments the last handful of weeks. And then I think the more they work Greg Newsome into the system, he's going to start to look pretty good for them because he was really good in Cleveland before he got traded.
You go back and watch that game that the Jags defense played against Seattle last week, and the Seahawks had like 3 or 4 chunks off of play action that were huge swings in the game. Obviously, the huge JSN touchdown that comes against Greg Newsome in his first start in that system. They had a really big game to Cooper Kupp over the middle of the field. And so, but down to down, especially when the Seahawks were forced to drop back in that game, the Jags did make it hard on them. And Jordan Lewis had it, again, like every single week, it feels like he has 3 or 4 plays that are like, holy shit, that guy is playing well. So I'm 100% with you on that. The one thing I do think carries over in that entire equation, though, is that the Jags have struggled against play action so far this year. They are 29th in the NFL defensively in success rate on play action per next gen. They're allowing 10 yards per attempt on those plays. Not only is that just something worth keeping in mind overall, we've talked about this. The Rams are using a ton of under center play action this year. And so kind of the focal point of the Rams passing game this year is exactly where the Jags have had a little bit of trouble. And you saw that as recently as a week ago. Let's get to the next one here. Colts Chargers. One thing from Colts Chargers that you're watching, Derek. What do you got for me?
This one to me is the Colts run game is the best in the league. Maybe at least by success rate, that is true. They're up just above 48%, which is the best in the league. And some of that is their RPO game is good. Some of that is Jonathan Taylor is playing like an all-pro. Some of that is the young offensive linemen they have in there have been playing really well for them. And even Tyler Warren as a blocker has been kind of kicking people's ass. And so you've got that against what Dave said earlier, a little bit of a mash unit still on I think the Chargers defense, and they've been one of the worst run defenses in the league this year. They play from a lot of too high shells, and I think the thing I want to say about that is you can be a really good run defense from those too high structures. We saw it from this team last year. They were pretty solid at certain points. But one, I think when you are one of those too high teams, like you want to live that way, you're just more feeble. Like if you pull out one of those cards from that house of cards, it all just starts to fall apart. And for them, that's been Puna Ford. Obviously, Perriman missed some time. And then I think some of the safety play for them in terms of fitting the alley has not been as good this year. So it's just, you add on all of those things, and all of a sudden you're the 28th best run defense in the league facing Jonathan Taylor.
Yeah, you watched that game last week that they played against the Dolphins, and RJ Mickens, who's like their third safety now that Alohi Gilman is out of the mix, he's in there for 11 snaps. One of those 11 snaps, he takes a bad angle on what turns into a 55-yard Devin Achane run. And you really do feel Denzel Perriman not being in there. I think that's compounded by Junior Colson's also on IR. So now they've been down to Troy Dye, who's like their 4th linebacker. And he's just not the ass kicker between the tackles that my man, SpongeBob SquarePants Denzel Perriman is. Like you feel him not being in here. And then Khalil Mack, is truly been one of the most physical edge-setting players in the NFL against the run for a very long time. They bring in Odafe Oweh, who actually did have an impact on the game last week. You could feel the difference with them having another like bendy pass rusher in the mix. He had a couple big pressures, but he is not put together to defend the run. And so I think on a few different levels, you're really starting to feel why this Chargers team is not capable of holding up, considering structurally the way they want to play.
I'm so glad you said SpongeBob SquarePants, because another selling point is the Chargers are wearing the monochrome like electric yellow this week. It's gonna.
If I had known that, we wouldn't even had this argument.
Bring some Excedrin when you watch this. It's gonna give you a headache.
If I had known that, we wouldn't have even discussed which one should be the game of the week.
I'm geeked, man. And like that, it is a valid point. I mean, I won't be surprised if this looks a lot like the other game that the Colts played in SoFi Stadium, where I think the Chargers can take advantage of some things about the Colts defense. I don't know what the Chargers are going to do about Jonathan Taylor, and I think you probably need 28 plus points to win this game.
It's crazy. We did an entire video this week about the Colts pass catchers, and we've talked a lot about it. I'm obsessed with them as a group. I love the way the pieces all fit together. I've had so much fun watching them this year. And every time I think and talk about the Colts, I just kind of forget to mention that Jonathan Taylor is playing like the best back in the league.
He is the most unsung all-pro player in football right now, and I mean, there's a lot of guys worth getting excited about on the Colts. I hear you. I mean, all the skill players I saw, and I love how collaborative people are in this space. But our friend Mina Kimes was gushing about Quentin Nelson in the Cardinals game, so I went back and put that tape on. I was like, "Yeah, let's go check that out." And he's just beating the hell out of everybody in that game. So there are a dozen reasons to be excited about the Colts offense. That doesn't make sense because there's only 11 players, but there are so many.
I mean, every player in Shane Steichen,
you can add the coach,
right? That gives me a dozen reasons.
But like, I think Jonathan Taylor is kind of the engine of the whole thing.
The idea that Charvarius Ward might miss a second game here after sustaining a concussion during warmups last week, all the karmic value that the Colts had to pump in there to get the most out of Daniel Jones, like the cosmic bet you had to make in order for that to work out, they're paying for it on the other end with stuff like that. The other Monday night game, I know it's on Monday night.
There you go.
I've thought enough about this to know. Texans, Seahawks, another good matchup from this week. Derek, one thing you're looking for in Texans, Seahawks on Monday.
Feel like we've got to go to the Sam Darnold of it all. I think even though there's a lot of interesting things to talk about with this Seahawks offense, I mean, bringing a new quarterback is what we're going to talk about. So for me,
I want to explore this for a second before you dig into this. You tried to pitch the idea of talking about the Seahawks run game against the Texans when we have Sam Darnold in the passing game is like one of the best in the league against one of the best pass defenses in the league. I'm
still going to do it. I'm still going to do it because it ties into what I'm going to be talking about here. So I'm still going to find my way.
Derek is sneaking in there.
Derek is so bored by anything that you can like possibly take for granted. Like he's gonna seek out the underlying aspect of it.
I'll find a way. And so here's my starting point, which I will work to my little run game thing in a minute. The Sam Darnold on True Media, you can look up this metric from PFF, which is like a probability of dropback rate, based on down and distance, personnel, all that jazz. On throws where the probability of a dropback is below 70%, so you're closer to just like, this could be a run or pass, doesn't matter, defense doesn't know. Sam Darnold's the best quarterback in the league. 0.56 EPA per dropback. He is shredding teams. Part of that is they've been really good out of 12 personnel, obviously, and so that can be a little bit more, is this run or pass? Their play action game has been really good, all that stuff. But when the probability of dropback is above 70%, Sam Darnold drops to 20th out of 37 qualifying quarterbacks in EPA per dropback, which isn't like disqualifyingly bad or anything, but you get to like, okay, this is an offense that we can start to kind of stop. And I think that the way that the Texans would get there is the Seahawks run game, to go back to my other little bullet point, gets hit in the backfield more than any other, almost more than any other team in the league. And the Texans front is kind of built to try to hit you in the backfield. And so if they can get 3 of those 2nd and 12s and really start to put them in, hey, you've got to drop back in 11 personnel now, that's where maybe they can get some of the bad Sam Darnold plays that we just haven't seen very much this year.
Yeah, the Seahawks have been able to kind of dictate the way that a lot of games have gone. They haven't been trailing very often. Darnold has the fifth fewest dropbacks while trailing this year. The Seahawks are 25th in their number of third down dropbacks with 5 or more yards to go. Like, they, for the most part, have been able to play the game they've wanted to on offense. What I'm interested in is just the personnel matchup on both sides of the ball. Teams this season, this is crazy, and this says a lot about the way the Seahawks want to play offense. Teams are playing 51% base defense against the Seattle Seahawks this year. In 2025, we're getting 50% base defense against the Seahawks. Do you know how many yards per attempt or yards per play the Seahawks are averaging when they throw against those base looks? 13.1. 13.
I was going to say 9.7.
Yeah,
that's obscene.
13. When I saw that this morning, I was like, oh my God. And you feel it when you watch them. 13.1 yards per play on throws against base defense this year for the Seahawks. The league average is 6.9. And the Texans, like they have for multiple different years, they play as much nickel as anybody in the league. They're 79% this year. It's the second highest rate in the NFL. And I'm curious, Derek, because I think we talk about the quality of the run game and then how it really hasn't been very good. The structure of playing with a lot of heavy bodies and committing to the run allows you to unlock everything else about the Seahawks offense. I wonder if a team like the Texans is just going to be like, this. Like, why would I put another linebacker on the field when I don't trust you to be able to run the ball at me? I know this is what you want me to do. So I feel like eventually we're going to reach a critical mass where a team is just going to say, you're not going to dictate the terms of how this is going to go. Your run game isn't good enough to warrant that.
And also, isn't like half the point of having Jalen Petrie is that he's kind of a linebacker for you anyway in these
that's
nickel
why you
looks?
can
Like,
live in nickel
I was going to
80%
say
of the
that
time.
feels like a unique advantage for them in this matchup.
Yeah, it's like kind of a perfect setup for them to be like, yeah, we'll be a nickel. This is fine for us. We don't really care.
Think Danico Autry is making his way back. I think there's a chance he might play this week. And then the Seahawks have 35 players that have been hurt. And so Derek Hall, Reek Woolen, Julian Love, Devin Witherspoon all missed last week. Again, this is a Monday night game, so we do not have a lot of clarity about injuries, but just something to keep in mind. Our next one here, Eagles and Vikings. My one thing I want to know is what is going to happen for the Vikings at quarterback? Because this is going to be an ongoing discussion now since free agency, essentially, us discussing both the short and long-term plan for J.J. McCarthy. Both of the quarterbacks for the Vikings are practicing right now, but they have not committed to who is going to play. And I know on Derek's part, that is like a little bit of an alarm bell about what they currently think of J.J. McCarthy. I'm curious what you think is going into this approach and this decision for Minnesota in this moment.
I was a beat writer for 10 plus years. I roll my eyes and don't believe most of what comes out of press conference settings. In the case of JJ McCarthy, if he says he is not 100% healthy, and which is what he said when he talked to reporters, I think it was on Wednesday, talking about his ankle, and he said, what you want to hear from a quarterback, like, I hope I get to play, but we're going to be smart. We're going to be patient, all that type of stuff. This is a case where I'm like, good. Yes. Don't do that. Like, please, God, you are not in a position in your career where you should be rushed out onto the field at less than 100% because you give your team that much of a chance to win. I mean, we saw the first 2 games of JJ's season. Like, that is, I don't want to see a less than 100% version of that. And I don't really think it's fair to him. You're going against Vic Fangio, by the way. And even with how we might feel about some of the holes in Philly's defense, like, that is still a talented group that can make life hard on you. This is a case where 99% of the time I'm like, this is bullshit. You're hiding him. You're doing something. I don't think that's the case at all here. I think you kind of owe it to a guy that you have invested in this kind of capital in to put him in the best situation possible. And if he's anything less than 100%, I think the only sensible play is to keep him the hell out of there. And if it has to be Carson Wentz, well, at least we get to see a Carson Wentz Eagles reunion.
That part of this is fair to me. If they don't think he's 100%, he's a young quarterback. They've already kind of built themselves a cushion with winning some games. So I get if you want to keep him on ice. I just think, to me, a lot of the messaging about what he is as a player has been very non-committal and not as enthusiastic as you often see with a lot of young quarterbacks. That, to me, is always, and some of that started in the offseason with the flirting with X, Y, and Z quarterback, including Aaron Rodgers. And I think that's just continued with the way that they've kind of talked about what Carson Wentz gives to the offense, for all the issues that he has, versus a lot of the stuff, them being like very honest and forthright with a lot of the stuff that JJ McCarthy still has to work on and kind of puts on the offense.
I think the messaging behind closed doors has been not like full-throated enthusiasm, but more belief than the Aaron Rodgers dalliance would lead you to believe. I think that was in part an Aaron Rodgers wanting to play for the Vikings thing, right? And so here's where I land on this. I think there are similarities broadly with what happened with Anthony Richardson last year, where you have a young quarterback who needs work and needs time and needs reps. But in the Colts situation, I think that they were justified in kind of pulling him back because there were some things going on behind the scenes where you can't really lie to the locker room, right? When he's pulling himself out of games and things behind closed doors are not being done to the level they need to be done at, I think you make a decision for the health of the organization. I think in the JJ McCarthy case, based on everything I have heard about the way he goes about his business, the way that he works, the way that he is wired, there's nothing going on like that. And so I think some of us made mistakes in saying, well, you have to develop Anthony Richardson last year without thinking about some of the optics. Here, I don't think that should be under consideration. And so I'm a little bit more tempted to say he has to play at some point. And so I think if you're making the decision to play Carson Wentz because you want to win some football games in the short term, that is a mistake in my opinion, because eventually JJ McCarthy is going to need to play in order for this to all come together. Because let's say you play Carson Wentz for the rest of the year, you win 9-10 games and you lose on wild card weekend and JJ McCarthy doesn't play. Where does that put you at the end of the year? That I don't support. But if the thought process is this guy is important enough that we have to insulate him from not playing at 100% because his development, his confidence, his trajectory is key to where we're eventually going to have to go, that part of it I can more easily get behind.
And to be clear, if we're still doing this song and dance in another 3 weeks, now my bullshit meter is going off and I'm like, all right, call this what it is, which is you don't trust this guy to get into the game. But it's been a month since he sprained his ankle. Ankle sprain can be a 4 to 6 week injury. That's very normal. And if he's, and like this is a case where if it was, I mean, name a quarterback. If it was any franchise quarterback, I'd be like, throw some extra tape on that thing, bud. We need you. But JJ is not at that point in his career.
No.
And the last
3 starts.
He's 2 starts in. He hasn't even made the third one yet. So to ask that of him just because he needs to play, I can't get there. But again, if we're doing this at the end of October, they play Thursday night football after this Eagles game, and then they've got the Lions on November 2nd. If we're not pretty confident that he's going to be playing when we get closer to that, then I'm starting to get suspicious. But right now I'm like, please protect your investment. Carson Wentz can start this game and it won't sink or save your season.
Specifically, more granularly about this game, what I'm looking at is the offensive lines on both sides of the ball and the run games on both sides of the ball. Because the Eagles' inability to run the ball on their own terms this year has been one of the things that's really held them back. Last season, even as the passing game was really uneven, even if they had stretches where A.J. Brown was asked what was wrong with the offense, and he said passing before they won the Super Bowl, they were able to run the ball whenever they wanted to. I was looking up the numbers on this today. It's wild. The Eagles have 2 runs of 20-plus yards this year. 2. A Jalen Hurts scramble and a throw that was backwards to Will Shipley in week 1 against the Cowboys. Saquon had 17 runs of 20-plus this year. He has 0 so far this season. And so they need to be able to get back to a place where they can at least rely on the ground game. And it does sound like Landon Dickerson may be back this week. He has been limited in practice. Getting him back, I think, would go a long way. And I think the same thing goes for the other side of the ball. No matter who is playing quarterback for the Vikings, it looks like they're going to get Donovan Jackson back this week. Brian O'Neill, who we thought would miss more time than this, was back at practice this week. And so if that offensive line can get back to something closer to full strength, even if Ryan Kelly is still out, and they can run the ball in the way they wanted to coming into the season, that is an area where the Eagles have struggled. And so I think which of these teams can more consistently run the ball in this game, Derek, that is probably the specific thing that I'm looking for the most.
And honestly, like, I think we kind of forget or like glaze over the fact a little bit that like the Eagles front is like kind of just missing a lot of guys and banged up. Like Zadarius Smith just retired. Their linebackers have been a little bit up and down just in terms of health this year. Like, it's not as surefire of a unit as I think that we want it to be, or maybe thought that it could be coming into the season. And so I think if the Vikings can get some of their guys back, it could be a decent game for them.
I also think getting Quinyon Mitchell back is huge because we already were worried about one of those outside corners for the Eagles, and then him going out, you just felt like how important he is to the overall formula with that secondary when you're so worried about who that other outside corner is.
Can I throw out one more dumb stadium nugget that might only be interesting to me?
You sure can.
If it's Carson Wentz, which it kind of sounds like it will be.
It's funny that I just don't care about that. Like, I probably should care that Carson Wentz is playing against the Eagles.
He's playing against the Eagles in the building where the Eagles won the Super Bowl when he wasn't their quarterback. Like, this is where the Eagles-Patriots Super Bowl happened. So that's just a fun little thing for me. Carson Wentz having to play the Eagles in that building of all buildings because he's a Viking now.
Derek, do you think that Carson Wentz has cause or case for a revenge game?
It's too many teams ago at this point. I mean,
ago,
this is what, like,
too much money by the Eagles.
Yeah, this is what, like,
with you,
5-6 teams later. Get over it.
Pro athletes are psychos, dude. Like, they will look for any reason to feel slighted and motivate themselves. So I think everything qualifies as a revenge game when it's your old team.
Carson Wentz was paid $79 million in cash by the Philadelphia Eagles.
Fine.
Yeah,
fine.
I think he's going to be okay in the long term. Last one here, Dave. Commanders, Cowboys. One thing from this game that you're looking out for.
The Commanders side of this is more pertinent right now, although there is a Dak thing I want to hit. But Derek, you and I mean, we've been on the train that the Commanders are candidates for regression. We don't know if that'll happen yet, but
Kind of already is.
Thank you, Robert, because this is kind of what it looks like, right? Commanders started 4-1 in one-score games last year. They were 8-4 on the year in one-score games. They're 0-2 right now. Part of that is because you didn't have Jaden Daniels for a loss, but some goofy shit happens in the rain and you lose to the Bears. Ironically,
They lost to the better team.
I mean, that notwithstanding, I love how their biggest thievery of 2024, the Hail Mary game, came back and turned into a game that they should have won. Like,
Cosmic justice.
Can we get through this? Welcome to the variance of the NFL. And so now you go on the road against the Cowboys. Like, on paper, this is a game that you should win. It's a miserable Dallas defense. They have a losing record. They can't stop anybody. You're favored on the road. This is a game that you should win. Dak Prescott's playing well enough that you should be worried about not winning. Like, Dak Prescott is playing at a level, and he's got a lot of hell over the course of his career for not being a quarterback that can will a team to a win. That's what he's doing right now.
This is the exact situation the Packers were in when they went down to Jerry World like 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
They should have won that game, and they didn't because Dak played out of his mind.
And CeeDee Lamb is practicing, by the way. Brian Schottenheimer said, like, as long as he's breathing, he's probably going to play. So, I mean, they haven't even needed CeeDee to be incredibly explosive. And I do love the wrinkle of, if he played for any other team, like, I'm thinking about Geno as a Seahawk and Kirk Cousins in his latter years as a Viking, where football hipsters like us are like, Kirk's actually playing some of the best ball in the league, but casuals don't know that because he's like buried at 12 o'clock on Sunday. Just, you got to be enlightened like us to know that these guys are balling out. Dak is that guy. Like, he is your favorite quarterback's favorite quarterback right now, but he plays for the Cowboys. Everyone in the world knows what he's doing. Like, you cannot fly under the radar, even if you should. Like I said, this is a lousy Cowboys team. Their defense makes them unserious, but they're playing the 3:30 Fox game. That's just who they are.
So here's the problem with that, though, is that the visibility makes the narrative more fragile. It's the exact same way it was with Tony Romo, where it's like, you can play well 98% of the time and be one of the best quarterbacks in the league based on the eye test, any metric you want to look at. And then if you throw one late interception, the entire thing changes because everyone saw you throw that late interception.
And I'm going to lose my mind. Actually, you talked about a minute ago Sam Darnold and the snaps, the dropbacks he's played from behind. Do you want to know Dak's number?
It's probably most of them.
Derek, do you want to know Dak's number of dropbacks while trailing?
It's going to be some obscene, horrible number, but yes, lay it on me.
133, which is second only to Cam Ward in the NFL.
I feel like there are some quarterbacks in the league who have barely thrown that many passes total, let alone while trailing.
So the other fun thing, it's not completely unique. Actually, Patrick Mahomes and Baker Mayfield have played 91 and 88 dropbacks respectively while playing from behind. But since they're playing for good teams, their dropbacks when trailing in the second half drop to 37. So like 2/3 of these snaps where you're trailing from behind are in the first half. Do you want to know Dak's second half number?
But it's double that.
89. This man is doing everything himself. And I know they have a losing record, but for the most part, he's been incredibly successful. And I will turn into the Joker if he's going to leave like an outbreaker inside and get picked off in the fourth quarter of this game. And
everything that just happened over the first 6 weeks is going to get completely erased.
And even though the Cowboys are not a serious team, they're going to like lead all the Monday talk shows, and I'm going to lose my mind.
This is going to be the most Sisyphusian season in what has been a Sisyphusian career for Dak Prescott. It's hard to say.
But having said all of that, to take it back to the Commanders, you got to win this game.
It's huge. I have a lot riding on this with this Commander situation, because I put them in the playoff teams tier of the tiers we did earlier this week. And if they lose this one, have you looked at their upcoming schedule?
After Dallas, it's at Kansas City, Seattle, Detroit. Then you get a little bit of a break, but then the week after that, it's Denver. Like, this is murderer's row. No weeks off, like after this game against Dallas, which isn't even necessarily easy with the way the quarterback's playing. And this is what it looks like. Like, I hate to be alarmist, but this is why you can't fumble at midfield in the fourth quarter against the Bears and lose that game, because how much better do you feel if you're coming into this at 4-2 instead of 3-3? I mean, if the Commanders are 3-4 on the other side of the weekend with what is awaiting them, that's not good.
I maintain that they lost to the better team. Derek, we've done this every week. We try to spend a little bit of time breaking down a matchup that might look ugly on paper, but we're going to try to give you a reason to watch it. This is by far my favorite one that we have done so far, because this is the sickest street that we have ever spent time on so far this NFL season. Browns Dolphins in a windstorm. Break it down for me.
So here's the sell. You've almost never seen a game like this, and that's kind of the point. Is it going to be bad? Yes. But one, we don't get two lefty quarterbacks under any conditions playing against each other very often. We've got two of them here. Both of these guys are also
quarterbacks from Hawaii.
Yes, like they're not only lefties, they're like every other thing about them is like kind of the same. It's crazy. Like both super prolific college quarterbacks, just like so many different things about them. They also don't have the strongest arms. Now that matters in any given week.
I was generous.
That matters particularly this week when we're getting potentially 40+ mile an hour winds in Cleveland. And these guys are not built to cut the wind like that. This is not Dan Marino. This is not John Elway. These guys are not going to be able to do that. And so you already have the weirdness of those two quarterbacks. And then these teams are bad. Like, we just have potential for two teams that have to run the ball 45 times or throw a bunch of screens. It's going to be a lot of tackling. It's going to be a lot of pads crunching. Who wants it more? I'm not sure either of these teams have the greatest vibes right now, but I'm pretty sure Miami's are worse given all the press conferences we get after every single game. Yeah, you know what? Yes, it's a who wants it less.
Beller, I think we got to get a running tab of Sicko Street candidates. Like, the Browns are the runaway, like, they're leading the clubhouse right now, but I have a sneaking suspicion that Dolphins are going to gain some ground over the second half of the season.
The Browns are such a bizarre team. Even the things that are like fun and intriguing about the Browns, it's like a weird duck-footed tight end and like an undersized second-round linebacker. Like, they are truly a bizarre NFL team right now. But I'm personally looking forward to this. The issue is, if we get down to like an actual serious point, if you're going to have to run the ball 40 times in this game, the Browns run defense, even if they struggled a little bit against the pass last week against the Steelers, and that's where they've had more issues, this run defense is still tenacious. And so I think the Dolphins, if that's the type of game that's going to have to be played, it's going to be an uphill battle trying to play that way.
We come here for the quarterbacks and the high flying offense. And don't get me wrong, like that's ultimately what I want to watch. But every now and then, it's nice to go back to like Rutgers Princeton in 1869 and just really get back to the root of this whole thing.
I was going to bring up Iowa. As a college football fan, this is going to be very much like an Iowa football game that we're going to get to watch.
We're playing it
if it's on Sunday
on the shore of Lake Erie, baby. It's Big Ten football all the way. It's going to be great.
All right, let's get to something we're actually excited to talk about. It's time to do a little under the hood about the Falcons defense. So we mentioned this in real time when we were breaking down the Monday night game between the Falcons and the Bills. I kind of sprung this on you guys that I wanted to do a little bit of a deeper dive on the Falcons defense. For this reason, I'm pretty sure, and I'm not trying to like shit on them for this, I'm pretty sure that FTN and DVOA predicted that the Falcons would be the worst defense in the NFL during the 2025 season. 6 games into the year, not only are they not the worst defense in the NFL, they are number 1 in defensive DVOA through 6 weeks, coming off of a big win against the Buffalo Bills. So the entire point of Under the Hood is trying to figure out, well, why is this unit better than we expected them to be? I think you can make a case, even with Sam Darnold, even with Daniel Jones. The Falcons defense being this, Dave, is probably the most surprising single unit performance in the NFL so far this year.
I've had a blast watching them since we decided we were going to do this. I have become a big fan. I still don't know why they're that good. Like, number 1 in DVOA is so impressive. I wonder how much variance there's going to be as the season goes. But you know what really helps? Having the 6th highest pressure rate in the NFL, which, if it lasts, would be Atlanta's best pressure rate as a team since 2018.
That feels like not even long ago enough. Like, it feels like
I thought you were going to say that.
I thought it would be like 10 or 12 years.
Yes.
Falcons fans are just like grimly nodding their heads right now.
I was looking at some of the numbers today, and we'll dig into some of them, but I think the one that may be most evocative about how different this Falcons defense feels, Derek, than last year. They are getting pressure on 34.5% of their non-blitzes this season, okay? Which is a pretty good number, right? They got pressure on 32.5% of their blitzes last season. So their pressure rate on non-blitzes this year is 4 percentage points higher than it was in 2024. That's what we're talking about and looking at with this Falcons team.
And I think it's kind of twofold, right? Like, one, they are just they are just doing a lot of really interesting stuff with their entire pass rush. Like, some of their simulateds and stuff are cool, but also just the edge players are better. To me, it is what they're doing with the blitzes, even though their 4-man rush has been better. That is really like kicking this thing into overdrive. One, they're literally doing it more than anybody in the league. Like, they're the only team above a 40% blitz rate. Like, they are throwing stuff at you. And it's not just that they're doing it. Like, the construction of it is really good. Why they're doing it, how they're doing it. Like, even just this last game against the Bills, for one, I thought they did a good job of, okay, who's the guy we can pick on? And on the Bills offensive line, I think in terms of trying to get him to move and try to pick stuff up, it's O'Cyrus Torrence, their right guard. They were blitzing that side all of the time, just doing a lot of stuff. Like, there was one where they put Caden Ellis in the B gap and then another linebacker a couple of steps back over the A gap. And I think in O'Cyrus Torrance's mind, he was like, well, Caden Ellis isn't a typical big, like a defensive lineman or a defensive end. So I've just got to pick inside threat and go get that guy. And so he goes and grabs the A-gap linebacker, and there's nobody to go pick up Caden Ellis, who's standing on the offensive line. Like, the way that they craft this stuff together is really, really impressive to me. And then I think part of too why their blitzes didn't get home as often last year. Well, if they brought 5 or 6 guys, they had some schmuck DB out there who you could just throw at no matter what and just target that guy. They don't have that guy anymore, really. And so I think just the floor of the secondary is a little bit better, and their pass rush plan has been just awesome to watch.
You look at some of the numbers, and so just comparing it to last year, this reminds me a little bit just in the difference of feel with the units, where you go from something that feels a little bit passive, a little bit more reserved, a little bit more conservative, to something that looks unhinged, right? That it's kind of what the Vikings did going from Ed Donatell to Brian Flores. Like, I do think that there are similar kind of vibes around like watching last year's Falcons and watching this year's Falcons.
That tracks so well because if it holds, their blitz rate is the highest since Brian Flores' first Vikings defense in 23.
So the numbers on that, they are bringing 5-man pressures per next gen on 41% of dropbacks this year. It was 19.5% last year. So they are sending 5 twice as often, literally, this year than they did last year. When you get to third down, when you get to define passing situations against this team, they're blitzing 65% of the time. League average is 30.6%. No other team in the league is above 44%. That's Todd Bowles and the Bucs. When you're making Todd Bowles look like
Todd Bowles is like, wow,
like
these
the
guys
Lovie
like
Smith
to blitz.
Bears, then I think you're really playing in the extreme side of things right now. And I think what's so notable when you watch this team, Derek, is that when you have a team that's this blitz heavy, you can kind of bucket it that way, where it's like it's just pure chaos all the time. But it's the details that they're playing with that I find to be so impressive. The way that they're manipulating certain protection plans and the way where guys are coming from, you really feel that. There was a 2nd and 18 on the Bills' first drive in that game. The Falcons had both linebackers walked up just before the snap. At the snap, both linebackers drop out and James Pierce drops out. So it turns into a 3-man rush. But because they're coming from unexpected places, a little bit non-traditional, you have the left guard and the center both get wasted on that play. And so even though it's a 3-man rush, you get 3 one-on-ones. They get a pressure, and Josh Allen scrambles for 5 yards. It sets up a 3rd and 13. So just little stuff like that. And then the other thing that two things that really, really jumped out to me while watching that game, just from a like coaching points and teaching standpoint and a details perspective. The amount of times that they perfectly understood, all right, if the back is running like a wheel or some sort of route to the flat to my side, if I'm an edge player, I have to peel off with him. And because I think they probably know Josh Allen is so good at finding those quick outlets versus pressure, we have to make sure we're taking away those quick outlets. If you're going to be a pressure team, you've got to understand where the answers versus pressure are. And I think they're doing such a good job of that. You saw Arnold Ebiketie did it 3 or 4 times. There was one play where they tried to get James Cook on a wheel down the left sideline. Caden Ellis is running step for him all the way down that sideline, takes away that throw. And then the other thing that just kept coming up on a lot of these 3rd downs, the Bills are so good at having these runaways on 3rd down, a lot of mesh, a lot of crossers. It's like a huge part of their offense. And in some of these pressure looks, they would just drop Jalen Walker out after he was like mugged up in the B gap. And he would literally be perpendicular to the line of scrimmage, just waiting to catch whatever crossing route was coming to him. And so beyond just the aggressiveness and them really turning up the volume, Derek, I think when you watch this team right now, you just have a really good sense of the coaching points and the teaching that's going on and the game plan specific stuff that they're really being able to hone in on.
That's the thing, is like it looks chaotic when you watch it with all the 5 and 6 guys flying around everywhere. But to your point, like the details are good, like knowing that we're just going to make guys peel. Also, like, yeah, having Jalen Walker just build a wall instead of a lot of times when you see guys drop off, they are exactly like back to the end zone. I'm eyes on the quarterback. I'm waiting for him to release and get outside of the pocket. And like Jalen Walker can do that, obviously. But them instead making the decision, no, we know what they like to do on a lot of these passing downs and where their outlets are. We're just going to take that away. And if Josh Allen gets out of the pocket, fine. But we kind of trust our pass rush right now to not let him do that. And so I thought that was really interesting. To me, you mentioned it. The James Cook wheel route that Caden Ellis defends, this to me is where you see the details where they push James Cook out a little bit to the left-hand side, and they have a tight split receiver to that side with the Falcons, their corners in press coverage. They try to run that receiver right across the middle of the formation to create that little pick on Caden Ellis so that he can't get to the wheel route. But the corner actually sees this and like gives a little bit of cushion between himself and the receiver so that Caden Ellis can run in between the two of them and then go and make that wheel route. Like that's just the communication that those players clearly have, and those players knowing what they might get out of certain formations. Like that's where that comes into play. Like it's just the details are this of like, not that I thought Ulbrich was a bad coach. I just don't know if we knew how good of a coach he was. I think what we're seeing now, it's like, okay, this stuff is pretty buttoned up.
It reminds me, again, of the Flores thing where, and it's a little bit different because Flores was always very blitz heavy, but it was a lot of man blitzes when he was in Miami. And so you did see him change his stripes a little bit and do something drastically different structurally when he got to Minnesota. I think he learned about himself. He learned where some of his weaknesses were. And we talked about this coming into the year. Jeff Ulbrich was pretty explicit about this. He's like, I think the words that he used were like, I kind of had like an awakening about how you'd have to play defensive football. And we thought that was going to manifest in the front structures they were using because the body types were different. It's manifested in a very different way. Like this is him doing a lot of stuff he never really did with the Jets. Some of the overload stuff where they have an overload front and the linebackers walked into the B gap, that was a part of the Jets pressure plan, but all the layers they've added to it, they've taken it to an entirely different level. And Derek mentioned the Caden Ellis part of it. He's really well fit for this system. The other guy that every time you watch them, what Devon Diablo has been, his ability, he's so rangy, the amount of ground that he covers, he's a
everywhere
really
on
good
Monday
blitzer.
night.
The play that he makes, roboting, which so when you're a linebacker and there's a play action, you're obviously going to step up, and they kind of teach you literally turn around and run back toward your area and cover to try to disrupt whatever crossing route or deep route is developing. He does it so perfectly on a quarter route to Dawson Knox. He just kind of reaches his hand backwards without even looking and gets a PBU. Like, there just aren't that many linebackers physically capable of doing that. And so they've had a lot of players that fit what they want to be schematically. And I think that's also helped unlock some of this stuff.
It's funny, too, because Caden Ellis has been one of the best blitzing linebackers for a minute now. They haven't used Diablo as a blitzer that much, and they did it a lot against the Bills. And I found myself thinking, like, well, I know this is Ellis's thing, but you should be doing this with Diablo more too. Like, he's awesome at it. I don't like find somebody else who can stay home, because both of these guys are good getting into the backfield.
And I think the other guy that we know he's a good player, but he's playing at an extremely high level right now. Like, watching AJ Terrell in that Bills game, every time they went at him, it was like, absolutely not. Like, he shut down those two Keon Coleman targets. Then there was another one where they were trying to get, like, I think it was twice it might have happened, but there was one on the right side where Allen had a play action. He was trying to take like a speed out. I think it was to Keon Coleman again. And he's like, I've learned my lesson. Like, I'm not doing that again. And he ultimately gets sacked because AJ Terrell takes that away. And so you got one lockdown guy in the back end. They're playing more single high than any team in the league, which is a drastic change from what they were last year. And I think part of that is because they're willing to live with AJ Terrell in those one-on-one situations. And so, again, it's just a really nice marriage of personnel and scheme. And then you combine that with all of the rookies that they currently have contributing to this entire ordeal.
It's early, so I don't want to get too excited, but like, I gave Terry Fontenot some shit. Like, I didn't love the trade for James Pierce.
It's still very, very early on that. Like, there's a chance that does not age well.
It is, but honestly, young guys in general, like Derek, you talked about it over the summer of needing some of the guys you drafted last year to step up. Rukarororo leads defensive tackles in pressure rate right now. I mean, I'm sure that'll vary as the season goes, but 15.5% pressure rate, that's a guy who's stepping up. And then, yeah, this rookie class is nuts, dude. Like, Jalen Walker and James Pierce get the headlines, and rightfully so. I've been so impressed with Xavier Watts. I mean, we saw what he could do as a ball hawk in September, but even in this game, just watching them play, you just said they're playing like 70% single high. When I saw that stat, I was like, well, yeah, okay. Jesse Bates is probably doing most of that because he's one of the best safeties in the league. And then you watch them, and Jesse Bates and Xavier Watts are, I mean, they're playing, like, they look like they've been playing together for like 6 years, and they're both, big veterans in this game. And I'm like, this is Xavier Watts' 6th game, and he feels this comfortable and confident moving around and playing deep, coming up when he needs to, flipping duties and like deciding who's going to roll in the moment. Like, incredibly impressive stuff from him.
Talking to Jeff Ulbrich before the season, talking about those DBs, what he said to me about Xavier Watts and stuck with me. He's like, football comes very easy to him. Not in a way that was like pejorative, but like in a way that it's just very, very natural. Like when you watch him play. And I think that's why they knew early on he was probably going to be the starter next to Jesse Bates. At the nickel, they weren't sure if Billy Bowman was going to be like the week 1 starter there, in part because they still liked the Alford. Like when they were watching him during camp, they're like, that's a good football player. Bowman gets that job, has some really nice moments early in his career. The moment that he gets hurt and misses a game, D. Alford comes in and has the game of his life.
It's a nice place to be, right?
Yeah. That's how you build a really good defense, right? When you have to swap out some of the component parts and you don't see any sort of drop off, that's what these really good units look like.
I do just want to say too, like, obviously when you're drafted that high, you're gonna hope that Jalen Walker becomes like a dominant guy who can win on the edge and do all that fun edge rusher stuff. In the meantime, he reminds me a little bit of the other Georgia guy, Mikael Williams, up in San Francisco, which ironically they're playing this game against each other. But he's just so fun and useful.
They're hard hat players right now.
They're just like, hey, go knock the shit out of a guy and make everybody else's life easier. And Jalen Walker's like, yeah, you got it, dude. I'll do that a dozen times a week. He's not like some dominant edge rusher just yet, but he just does half a dozen cool things in a game.
So this is all the positive stuff. I think if we're really doing like a real diagnostic on what this has been, we have to talk about where the weaknesses are as well. This team is 31st in rushing success rate on defense. And with all of that speed and all of that explosiveness and all of that chaos creation that they have in their personnel, Derek, it's left them light in the pants, right? Like Diavon Diablo is a 220-pound player. And you saw last week when the Bills wanted to run the ball straight downhill at them, they're going to struggle to hold up against that sort of run game in those situations. And so that is the drawback of building a team like this and having body types like this, is that you are susceptible if a team wants to play against you that way.
Right. They've just built a lot of small, fast people who hit. And like, honestly, like the Texans are kind of like this. It's just their players are better, so they can kind of live with it a little bit more. But it's kind of the same issues. And like, yeah, for them, this is why I think they're a good defense. And I have a lot of faith that they can stick as like a top 12-ish unit with just how insane their pass rush is, how much more full their secondary is, all that stuff. But they're a very script dependent defense to me. Whereas like, I feel like if they're offense doesn't give them some sort of cushion early in the game, or the opposing offense is a really, really good rushing team, or some combination of both, you can end up in games like the Panthers game where you just lose 30-0 and you don't really ever get a chance in the game because you're the clear like unit for you that can win the game, which is your front four, and your however many guys you're adding on to it can't win you the game anymore. And so I worry about that with them a little bit, but the good is so good that it's like I'm okay with them in this stage of their rebuild kind of being still a little bit of a script-dependent unit.
The good news for them is the San Francisco 49ers are not built like the Buffalo Bills up front. Even in the good years, that's not how the Niners wanted to run the ball. It's a lot of getting the ball on the edge, a lot of zone. The Niners' run game has been objectively bad this season, and so that's not an area where they could probably take advantage of this Falcons team. And the other thing that I think on the other side, where it's actually a pronounced weakness for them, the Niners right now are 10th in the NFL in EPA per dropback versus 4 pass rushers this year. They are 28th when teams bring 5 or more. You felt that last week when they played against the Bucs. San Francisco with Kyle Shanahan, even in really good moments, last year being one of those examples where even when they were super banged up, they were still a top 10 passing offense. Teams have started to figure out ways to pick on that sort of offense and protection. And now you have Jeff Ulbrich, who understands that offensive system extremely well, going against the Niners team that is vulnerable in that situation. And so if there is an offense that is able to pick on this Falcons team, the Niners as currently constructed don't seem like that sort of offense.
And especially not with Purdy. Like at least Purdy, you could get the chance of like, he makes the guy miss and goes and makes a play. Mac Jones doesn't do that. And Mac Jones, even though he's played well overall, has been one of the worst quarterbacks in the league when pressured this year. And so if they can get 12 pressures on him in this game, that's where you start to open the door for a pretty tough Niners outing.
Before we get to what we want to know from week 7, one more thing we wanted to hit this week, Dave, that you've been on and talking about and thinking about is there's some times where like there's a narrative that crops up over the course of the week that they can be a little bit overdone, but I'm like, nah, I'm actually very into this one. Like I actually buy into this and I'm really excited about this. Mike Vrabel going back and playing the Titans a couple days after they fired their head coach, perhaps so he did not have to play against Mike Vrabel. I'm all in on this one.
There's just no perhaps about it in my brain. And like
I was trying to be careful.
The writing was on the wall that Brian Callahan was on his way out. If it wasn't this week, it would have been eventually. That's totally fair. And the Titans, with the exception of the Cardinals just handing them a game, the Titans looked like they were getting worse every week. So like, it's not like this is surprising. It's not like this is out of nowhere, but you cannot tell me that the timing of this was a coincidence where arguably the most successful head coach in Titans history, would it be Mike Vrabel or Jeff Fisher?
I think Jeff Fisher probably still, right? Just for a longer period of time.
I suppose. And he did get to a Super Bowl, but still an incredibly successful coach who got this team to 2 division titles, got him to the 1 seed in the AFC, coming back into town. And if I needed more evidence of this, and I got to give Albert Breer credit for just putting me back on this. I mean, it's common knowledge, but he wrote about it. But the day after A.J. Brown torched Tennessee in 2022, John Robinson got fired. The Eagles beat Tennessee 35-10. A.J. Brown, who had just been traded to Philly for a first-round pick, goes 8 for 119 and 2 touchdowns. And the next day, John Robinson is fired? Does that not reek of reactive ownership decision-making to you? And so with that in the background, and it's Amy Adams Strunk calling the shots, she still owns the team. Do you think it's a coincidence that even though it's been obvious the Titans were in trouble for a long time, and even though
I don't think it's a coincidence,
the Titans bye week is week 10, which is on the horizon, like there were so many other times you could have done this, and they just didn't want to watch their old coach embarrass their current coach. Like that's all there is to it.
They didn't have an interim like in mind. They had to like pick Mike McCoy because there wasn't an obvious candidate. And
it was like I can't watch this. Like I cannot watch Mike Vrabel do what he's going to do to the guy that we replaced him with.
Yeah, apparently Mike Vrabel this week, Katie, our producer, brought up the quote that he said, there's some things that are interesting and some things that are important. This is interesting, but it's not important. Like him going back and playing the Titans. That sounds like somebody who thinks this is important.
Mike Vrabel also said, and I'll also say Mike Vrabel had a really nice comment about being sad to see that Brian Callahan got fired, and the coaching fraternity is a very small one. And he had a line about how you hear from a ton of people when you win, but nobody texts you when you lose. So, I don't think it's personal between Vrabel and Brian Callahan. I think it's very personal between Vrabel and the Titans. And he also had a line about the Goodwill in Nashville having a ton of Titans gear that he dropped off on his way out of town. So yeah, regardless of who their coach is, I think Mike Vrabel's interested in having a moment here this
At least
weekend.
The colors are the same. If he's got some like red shoes, he can still keep rocking those. So if they're not team specific, at least that carries over. Before we get to what we want to know from week 7, quick wins pool update. For those of you guys unfamiliar with the practice, we pick 5 good teams and 2 teams pick to winish, or pick Vegas projecting them for 6.5 wins or fewer. So 7 teams each. 7 weeks into the season, I am currently in the lead. I'm 24-18 after I think I had a 1-6 week in week 5. And so the fact that I still have that level of cushion makes me feel pretty good. Dave, you were at 19-22. Derek is 16-23-1. The tie remains disgusting.
Listen, the Packers disgust me for a number of reasons right now, and that is chief among them. I will say, though, at this stage, to only be like 2.5 games back, given how like the first 3 weeks of my season looked, I feel okay. I feel okay.
2.5 games back of not losing.
Well, I just need to not lose. I don't give a shit about winning.
Yeah. I don't care about winning. I'm just trying to avoid which the other fun wrinkle of this is I'm just keeping a close eye on the draft order. Like obviously it's the Jets right now because they haven't won, but I'm just like, all right, which fan base am I going to have to consult for tips on how to dress like a super fan? So it adds a little extra element of suspense to it.
I feel mean even saying this, Derek. Part of me hopes you lose, so you have to do the Bengals like that. There is part of me that like does want to see that.
Am I going to be the Bengalorian? Is that where this is going to go?
We could use that as like a mood, like an inspiration board, and then kind of build on that. But I absolutely think that's going to be part of the text that we pull from.
Okay.
Dave, what do you want to know by the time week 7 in the NFL is over?
It's flying under the radar because it's not a big game. It's kind of strange to see the Chiefs play at noon, but I want to know what their offense looks like with Rashee Rice. I mean, we've been saying since August, 6-game suspension. They don't have Rashee Rice. We don't know what this offense is truly going to look like. And by the way, even without him, they're second in offensive DVOA right now, 4th in offensive success rate, 9th in scoring, 10th in explosive play rate. Like they've kind of
that last part is that's what really gets me going.
It's
because it's been a while.
They're pretty good. They're rounding into looking like the team that I thought they were going to be, and they have done it without Rashee Rice. So what does that look like now? And I think this is a good week to bring him back into the fold. I think the Raiders are a defense that you should be able to get the best of. I know the Raiders have famously kind of given the Chiefs fits at times over the years, but a home game against this Vegas defense sounds like the perfect place to reintroduce Rashee Rice. So I want to know what that looks like.
What do I want to know from week 7 is what volume does the Jackson Dart hysteria reach by the end of this game? Right. Obviously, you're a primetime game against the Eagles, who've just destroyed you consistently over the last couple of years. You win that game. The vibes are just insanely high with the Giants right now based on how he is playing. They have something to be excited about on offense for the first time in a long time. The Giants have finished bottom 3 in scoring in 4 of the last 5 seasons. The year where they didn't was 2022, where they tried to turn their quarterback into a piece of furniture that could just be forgotten. Like, it has been a very long time since you could be a Giants fan and be excited about the quarterback. The quality of his play, that's an ongoing conversation, right? Like, what Derek said on the recap show after they beat the Eagles is right. He's just doing shit, and it's fun. Like, what they're bringing, him and Scatabo, to this is incredibly exciting to watch and incredibly enjoyable. If they play well against the Broncos, if the Giants somehow beat this Broncos defense and those guys are at the center of it, I think we're going to be reaching new levels here. And so how excited should we be about the Jackson Dart experience, and what does that look like with one game more under his belt?
If they even play well, my God, if they beat the Broncos, I'm just imagining like the Sunday morning shows doing like Cam and Dart impressions, or like,
that's absolutely gonna happen.
Like Gronk is doing a skit about Jackson Dart, or they're getting Terry Bradshaw to like take his shirt off.
Everyone's gonna have their shirts off. That's exactly what's gonna happen. We're just gonna have shirtless shows everywhere because of Cam Scatabo. Derek, what do you want to know by the end of week 7?
Listen, I teased my Spencer Rattler stuff at the top of the show, and I'm going to bring it back. So his last 2 games that he's played, I've thought he's played well on film, and we were even talking about this like week 1 in The Hangover and stuff like that. The last 2 games that he's played are the only 2 that he's thrown at least 225 yards and at least 7 yards in attempt. Like, it's been a tough go of it in terms of the numbers, but he's actually stacking some good statistical performances. One, I kind of want to know if he can do it again against the Bears defense that, even though they're getting some of their guys back and played okay in that last game, they're still pretty gettable to me. I also think the other more interesting element of this, the guy who replaced Spencer Rattler at Oklahoma 5 years ago or whatever it was Caleb Williams. And so I think there's just a little bit of this. Yeah, it's a little bit of a revenge game. I kind of just want to see how do they interact, and how does that go, and how have they been talking about this game?
I'm a little bummed Derek isn't going to be here to watch the games, because it would be very easy to sell him on having the Bears-Saints game have their own TV because Rattler is playing. So I'm going to have to do a lot of the heavy lifting, along with the 6 other Bears fans we have in our office.
I can't wait. Derek will be back in like 3 weeks, and if the Bears are still winning and playing this way, he's going to get jumped if he says their defense is gettable. Like, what the hell are you talking about? You're talking about the NFC.
Yeah, you're going to have to recalibrate as a Chicago resident before you get back here.
He left town, and everybody thought the Bears sucked, and he comes back, and they're like, watch your tone about the monsters.
I'm going to have to be
Midway.
slightly dishonest about one team.
All right, guys, that's all we have from week 7. Very excited about the slate this week. A lot of good stuff on tap. If you're watching this on YouTube, encourage you to like and subscribe to the channel. Doing a lot more stuff specifically for YouTube this year. Our Monday and Thursday shows are only available on YouTube, and both Derek and I are doing plenty of standalone video stuff. I did one about the Seahawks offense last week. Derek has had one pretty much every single week about, one scheme nugget that he has noticed from the previous week or just over the course of the season. So encourage you guys to check those out if you have not. For now, that's all we got. Appreciate you guys listening. We'll talk to you very soon. Thanks for watching. Follow the Athletic Football Show wherever you get your podcasts, and don't forget to subscribe on YouTube.